Good evening. We hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world, whether you are locked in your house or not. We hope you're having a pleasant evening. West Ham haven't played in how long has it been?
I
Two
know
Oh,
months?
PCA
for
hasn't
about
played
2 months.
15,
Yeah.
50 days.
Yeah, we haven't lost in 2 months. I remember the last time I could say that. Probably never, other than the closed season. So we got a big crowd tonight. We got John in Philly. We got Chris. Chris, where are you at the moment?
So I'm back home in Marysville, Ohio.
Okay, in Ohio. You got some Cincinnati stuff I see there in the background. So.
Cincinnati Reds, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, that's right. I remember the Steelers part, which is why I got confused as to where
You
you
got
were.
Big Ben right up there.
There you go. Well, yeah. We've got Kostya in DC, who's about to tell us a story here in a minute, and we've got our buddy Selly in Sacramento. But he's a Colorado guy. You guys all know that. So, and I see the chat room's filling up already. I'm glad to have everybody here. I'll start with the stuff we always talk about. Check out our website, AmericanHammers.net. As far as I know, you can still buy stuff on there. Cool stuff. Anything you want with a West Ham logo or a logo of one of our shows or whatever you want. Check it out. Also, if you want to be on the show, let us know. Let us know on Twitter, Facebook. Where else are we? Instagram, wherever, anywhere. We're on all the channels. Except maybe Snapchat, because I don't think I'm allowed on there. Being over 40, I don't think I'm allowed on Snapchat. I also don't think I want to be on Snapchat, but all the other channels we're on those. So let us know. You can go to our website and let us know too. We'd love to have you on. Don't care where in the world you are, anywhere. We'll make time for you, and we'll get you on if you're a West Ham fan and you want to talk about how much you love West Ham. Well, that's what we do. So anyway, yeah, fantastic to have you here. So Kostya, and I haven't seen Kostya in ages. I don't remember the last time I was on with you. I mean,
I've been on shows, but it just hasn't been with you as a host or on there at all. But
I've backed off a little bit, over the past few months. I don't do as much as I used to. So I've missed you.
Thanks.
But you were just about to tell us now your bar in DC. So go and tell us about your story. You were telling us from this morning.
I've had this story for a while, but I think now that our old pub has officially closed, which John just informed me of, I think now it's appropriate to tell it publicly. The location of our pub is directly across from the Chinatown Metro. It's considered downtown. It's a very central location, and therefore the rent is super duper high, to the point that the Starbucks next to it actually closed.
A Starbucks closed?
A Starbucks closed
Wow.
on 7th and 8th Street, Northwest. Wow. And the Walgreens is turning into a Wawa, which I like, but our pub has officially closed, and it makes a lot of sense. Our old pub, I should say, makes a lot of sense because, when the rent goes up by 5-10 grand or whatever, I don't know if cost cutting on the internet bill is really going to make up that difference, but there was like a significant difference in the quality of the games that were put on. So we were watching on our phones for a few weeks in a row there. The image is blurry. It's behind 15-20 minutes. And we're watching the Southampton game, which was in the end a great game, but we found out that it was 1-1 and that Southampton had tied because someone had an update on their phone and looked at it. It's so tempting to look at it. And the game's 15 minutes behind. And so we just had it. We just paid all our checks. We walked across the street to the Spurs bar. Spurs were not playing, so it was really our bar for that time. I think I put a Sheku Kouyaté sticker in the bathroom. And
you had a Kouyaté sticker on you?
I save West Ham player stickers in my wallet to put in random bar bathrooms.
Oh, you mean like the Panini things?
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm not going to buy any more packs of those because what I've realized is that it's not a very good adhesive and it comes off unless you put it on like glass. Glass is great. That's it. Anyway, we took a picture in the Spurs bar. We actually had a perfect angle where there was no Spurs memorabilia like visible. And then from our understanding, the Spurs fan group spoke to the owner and said, this can't happen again.
Oh, really? Oh, they got triggered?
Yeah. So they actually tweeted, they retweeted our picture in their pub. And the Spurs account, which I won't say, I don't know what it is anyway, but it was like, are we going to allow this in our establishment? That was literally what they put with the picture. And then I didn't want to go back and forth with them, but one guy posted a picture of a caravan, which I think is technically racist and like reference to gypsies. And the other guy said, "Oh, it's not a big deal. They don't show the championship in the States." And so that was kind of how they were digging at us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well done.
And so now we're at Across the Pond, which is in DuPont Circle, which is also a pretty ritzy area.
Yeah, I've heard it. No, I've been there. I mean, I've been to DC. I've been there. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
we're right next to the Russia House, which is pretty famous for seedy things happening there.
That makes sense.
Yeah. If you're familiar with DC, you know what I'm talking about.
I'm familiar with Russians. So.
I think Russians go there. I think that's the point.
More familiar than maybe. Yeah, I've had a lot of Eastern European friends over the years. So good people.
Cool.
But if you need something, they can get it for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they can handle it. That's good. I love that. I love that. Are we going to allow this to happen? Oh, they're well odd. Them Tottenhams. That's a great story. That's really funny. Whining about it, of course. Nobody's just like scrapes it off the thing, right? They're like, no, we got to tweet this and whine to the owner about it.
Right.
The bartender was great. I don't think any of those Spurs fans know this, but their bartender played 2 different versions of Bubbles for us over the loudspeaker without any of us asking. He just did it.
That's because he liked you better. Because he had to deal with those.
Probably.
Right? He's got to deal with all those Tottenham people all the time. As soon as you walked in, he's probably like, thank God. A break.
Yeah, he told us that some Arsenal guys went in there and started a fight once, and the bouncer had to kick out one of the Arsenal fans.
Oh, you can't be serious. Really?
Yeah.
That must have been highly comedic. Tottenham and Arsenal American fans going at it like a bunch of like they're in Green Street, like a bunch of tough guys.
Yeah. Well, it might have been the expats too. You never know.
Oh, it might have been the expats. Still hilarious though, because it's Tottenham and Arsenal. So still funny to me. That's good. I like that. That's a good story. That's good. Good intro to everything. I see all kinds of people in the chat room I've never seen before. So it's nice to see you and welcome. And we hope you enjoy the show. And if you want to comment, please do. And I'll try to read stuff as much as I can and work everybody in. I wouldn't say there's like a huge agenda tonight, but there's a few things we could talk about. First one, if you guys don't mind, I have tried to avoid talking about shutdowns and that sort of thing here, but it's cropping up now that, of course, the Premier League is considering maybe trying to get back into action in June. When you got 92 games left to play, that's kind of a lot. And you guys have all heard this. They're talking about doing neutral sites, players quarantined in hotels, no fans, obviously, and cranking out like maybe 2 or 3 games a week. Well, today, and I don't know if everybody else saw this, we tweeted this on our account. ESPN, which I know is not the greatest source for English football news, but even so, ESPN said today, a lot of players don't want to do it. A lot of the Premier League players are like, we don't want to do this. We don't want to be quarantined in hotels. We don't want to take a risk of getting this disease. I mean, granted, it's probably not going to kill them because it's something that generally is worse for older people, but it's a very nasty disease for those who get the bad version of it. It's very vicious. They don't want to play. So now I don't think they have a union like we have in American sports where there's a players association that could basically shut everything down. But they do have some sort of collective that, they have together. So just curious to, what you guys think about this. How do you feel about the players, at least some players and possibly a lot, voicing concerns? Do you think the season should resume? John, you're right next to me on the screen. What do you think?
Yeah, they should be concerned as players, as the health of them, as the health of their families. A lot of these players start families much younger than a lot of us, I think. So there's a lot of, really, they're kids, 18, 20, early 20s. A lot of them have their own children. They've got families they come home to every night. They should absolutely be concerned. I thought Simon Jordan made a good point on TalkSport this week for anybody that was listening on that. I didn't catch the full thing, but maybe just a couple of snippets. He was talking about, what are you going to call it if somebody catches it and dies, a player? Is that corporate manslaughter? If you work if you work at one of these stores, that's the shops that are currently open, you probably have a bit more choice of whether or not to show up to work. Some of these shops that are reopening, the Premier League, you don't really have that option. They're not going to pull in these teams and expect everybody on the B squad to come out to play. If it's not the main stars, there's going to be an issue there. So I'm behind it. I think the players should be worried. I don't think it's a responsible thing to do to start the season. God, they're even talking about this thing could go through in a second wave coming in Christmas. My proposition would be, and I've said it a few times before, but I think I want to expand on it now. So I think you keep everybody where they are. If you're going to end the season, keep everybody where they are. Everybody hurts a little bit. But the other option could be, so this was the 1920 season, right? Why don't we make it the 1921 season? Because we're not going to start next season on time. So why don't we reduce next season, pick it up there, combine the two, and then you get your promotion and relegation from half a season in 19 and half a season in 21, because that's probably the next available safe time to go and start the game again. It's not what we want to hear. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants this to get dragged out so long that we're still talking about that. But, if it's going to go through next winter, that's already halfway through next season. So why not take half of what we've already got, half of what's to come, and stick it together and make one season?
I hadn't heard a suggestion like that. That's actually not too bad of an idea.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've had Paul Konchesky on here recently. We've had Matt Jarvis on the show. And when we talk to these former players, they all think that the season should finish. I mean, it's because they just have a different mentality. I think most fans outside of the red half of Liverpool are ready to see it end in one way or another, just for a lot of reasons. But, the players will tell you they want to see it finish. And actually, John, I think that's a really good suggestion. I mean, my thing has always been, bring 2 to 4 teams up from the championship, just give them a reward. Don't relegate anybody because it's a harsh thing to do in this situation, and have a 22, 24 team league. I know that'll never happen because the fixture congestion would be too great. But if you think about it, the only issue I could see is, do you open a transfer window ever? Because you really can't if you're continuing the same season. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, it's not fair, because you know who that will hurt the most? That will hurt the teams that are at the top of the championship. They will get absolutely pillaged.
Right. Well, we would too. We. I mean, you could see us losing Declan. You could see us losing. We'll talk about this in a minute. We see us losing to Diop. You could see us losing several key players, and then you're supposed to finish this. It's like being cup tied, right? I mean, does Diop play for Chelsea against us in the same season? I wouldn't think so.
No way.
I don't know, Chris. So what's your thought on the whole "do we finish the season" thing?
So first of all, really quickly, I wanted to address a comment I saw from Facebook from my podcast host Zach, co-host. Friendly
Zach, yeah, I didn't see him on there.
Friendly reminder to Chris that Ohio doesn't exist. No, you're wrong. Everything is Ohio. Haven't you seen the memes?
I've been to Ohio. I've not been to Cincinnati, but I've been to Cleveland. A long time ago, almost 25 years ago, I went to Cleveland. It existed. I'll say that much for it. It existed.
But
I was there and I left, and that's most of what I remember about it. So,
yeah, as it stands right now, I only see 2 courses of action because the players should be worried. And I know one player that is worried. If you go and look through, I saw it pop up on my feed. Aaron Cresswell is liking stuff saying that the only fair way is to null and void. I saw him. He liked one of Piers Morgan's tweets like that.
Yeah.
But
Piers Morgan not making a lot of friends. I'm not saying he's wrong, but his approach is harsh.
Yeah.
And I've never liked him actually personally. I just don't like him mainly because he's Arsenal, but I just don't like him anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying he's wrong about this. That's not the point. Anyway, go ahead.
But regardless, I think that there's only really 2 ways because yes, the players should be worried, but the bigger issue is it's a logistical nightmare. Just trying to figure all of it out.
Right. Of course,
Robert. Yeah.
Well, and you can't. I mean, and we've talked about this before. That one got to Sully. He's loving it. I do believe that to be true, actually.
Yeah, there's been 8 astronauts from the state of Ohio, more than any other state in the.
I'm not understanding. Why should I love an Arsenal fan? Was there a reason why I should love Arsenal fans? I can't think of one other than that you hate Tottenham. That's about it.
But
Yeah, that's about it.
there's only one other option forward, and Germany, I know, is actually kind of proceeding with their season. They've given the
Right.
go-ahead to resume training.
They've had about a quarter the number of deaths that the UK has had.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah.
But I think that the UK could almost use them as a bellwether to see to see how it kind of goes, see if there's any issues, see it, like the feasibility of it. Because I mean, they give them almost a few weeks to see to kind of examine how it operates, and if it is feasible, maybe it is salvageable. But I don't see it becoming a full season. I don't see being able to get that many number of games in a matter of a month.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always the issue too of you're going to have clubs that had to go to Anfield, but when they play Liverpool at home, they're playing in Birmingham again, an empty stadium. It's not the same thing.
No.
Anyway, Kostya, what's your take?
I find it interesting that Europe is obviously far more socialist than our country. Our country is far more capitalist than Europe. I don't think there's a disagreement there. What I've never been able to wrap my head around is that 3 of our 4 major sport leagues have salary caps. Right?
Yes, that's true.
And for some reason, Europe's football system is super capitalist, hyper capitalist almost, and it's all about the money. And that's this entire conversation, this narrative about the season being restarted is completely driven by money, and I don't think it's feasible at all. I think it's like somebody saying, "Oh, school's only going to be closed for a couple weeks." Right. You can say that and be optimistic, but it's still not going to happen. I think we should be talking about delaying the next season. Yeah. Right. And I'm hearing all these transfer rumors and things. I don't know if I can really believe them because I don't know if the transfer window is going to start on June 1st. I think you should push that back too. I would start with push the window to July 1st and push the season to September 1st. And I would consider something like reducing the season or cutting just canceling the Carabao Cup for the year. Do something like that so that you can have a condensed season in case you have to start in October, November.
Or what you could even do is, since there is like usually like a 2-week quarantine period, I just thought of this, spanning the games out, less games, more spread out.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's a thought. I think it would take a long time to finish that way. There's 92 games left. It's a lot. It's not like we're in like the next to last week or something. I'm going to get Shelly a chance too, because I know you've been waiting patiently. What do you think about all this, Shelly?
It's I guess the nice thing to go last, so you can take a little bit from everybody's argument. But no, I think there really is only one of 2 ways to do it. You either cancel it out and just it never happened kind of thing, or you just wait until everything is good, and then you can kind of, as John was saying, kind of start up where you finished and then just play the rest of this out and then have a shortened season next year. I think if you have a shortened season next year, you get rid of the FA, not the FA, I'm sorry, the Carabao. Well, I don't know, maybe all domestic cup draws, you might just have to go away with, which I know wouldn't be smart for the smaller league teams, but at the same time, I guess it would just depend on how many regular Premier League games or regular season games you'd have to play, because the smaller teams shouldn't get crucified for that too. So I don't know, that would be a logistical thing. But even then, like Champions League, would you need to do that? Because that in essence could be the worst case scenario, because you're literally going from country to country. Yeah. If somebody has it, especially if they don't know it, it's not doing anybody any good. Especially like Italy. Italy, as far as all the European countries, has been hit the worst. Yeah. So and
Italy and Spain, which are huge footballing nations, obviously. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it is all just driven by money, but at the same time, like, as far as the science side of it, you keep hearing people say there's going to be a second wave, whatever. And I was watching this thing on Netflix called The Coronavirus Explained. and they were talking about how back in the 20s or whenever was it the
Spanish flu, 1918.
Spanish flu was like
the
1918.
Spanish
Yeah.
flu. Yeah, so they were
Yeah.
saying like St. Louis kind of did a quarantine. They were one of the first cities in America to do a quarantine, and they got on it really quickly, and they had a low number of deaths, right? But then Philadelphia,
Here we go. Always
kind of
picking
put
on
next to
Philly.
it.
Philadelphia threw a parade.
Philadelphia
Yeah.
threw a parade, and their
Of course
deaths
we did.
spiked. Yeah, their deaths spiked. And then as the first curve went down, St. Louis opened back up, and then they got a second wave of it. Now they still had less deaths, but they had more deaths spread out. You know, it was to Philly where they had the spike, and then everybody was like, "All right, stay inside," and it went right back down. So I think you just at this point, I think the health and safety for everybody, not just the players, but the staffs and everyone. You got to think of that too. As much as it'd be nice to watch football, it'd be great to be able to make sure nobody's going to get sick. Because, yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, and I obviously not an epidemiologist or a virologist or whatever.
So it seems like we've all had to become one.
I feel
Right.
that way. Yeah. Well, I do work in marketing, which means I'm an expert on everything. John knows what I'm talking about. No, but seriously, what I've read is recently, like Singapore basically had this thing beaten, and then started opening back up to like migrant workers, and cases started to spike again. And Singapore apparently traced it to like one guy who came from Bangladesh and was positive. And he, again, started the sort of network effect of spreading it to other people. And now Singapore has had to go back into lockdown, or at least some time ago had to go back into lockdown. So some of these countries that had flattened the curve, had beaten the virus, they weren't careful about, continuing to do social distancing and all that sort of thing, and it came back. And of course, if you listen to Dr. Fauci here in the U.S., who's our guru on viruses, he'll tell you that there's a strong possibility that even if it subsides some in the summer, it could come back again in the fall and winter. So, I never want to talk too much about this stuff because it's depressing and we hear about it every day. I don't see any practical way Premier League football comes back in before the fall at the earliest. And I'll tell you, I'm the only one who feels this way. Nobody agrees with me. I don't want to see it in empty stadiums. I don't. I would rather wait until we can have proper normal football. I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that. Kostya, are you with me? Because nobody else is ever with me.
I mean, I don't think I need to talk much. You said it. I completely agree. I just don't agree that you're in the minority. I think a lot of fans would rather wait longer if they can actually go to the game.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, listen, I mean, we're not fans who go to games on a regular basis because where we live, but I do think that it's really callous of the Premier League to just say to season ticket holders, well, screw you guys, or we'll give you a stream, to me, a match played behind closed doors is just a workout. It doesn't mean anything.
Glorified training session.
Right. And again, I mean, massive difference between having to go to Anfield, Old Trafford, Emirates, wherever, any of those places, and go into there with their fans and their atmosphere, and playing in a stadium, playing in Sheffield, playing at Hillsborough or whatever, in front of nobody, with everybody staying in the same hotel.
I did hear they did start playing up again. That or I read actually that they would think about doing a 5 substitute system. Since there would be more games in a smaller amount of time, but even so, I wouldn't want to play in an empty stadium.
In case anybody tests positive in the middle of the game at halftime.
Yeah, right.
Right. And if we have to use 5 substitutes, that means that Sanchez is going to find his way onto the field. I think that's a no.
Don't even put that thought in my head.
Well, I mean, you got the obvious thing that happens is, Jack Wilshere says he's healthy. So he's clearly the first one who's going to test positive when the season restarts. I mean, well, he won't last. So it just doesn't seem like a practical thing. And then I saw today, maybe you guys saw this on Twitter, and I haven't looked it up. I haven't tried to find it, but there was a poll that suggested that fans were backing this, this empty stadium plan. I haven't heard other than Liverpool fans, I haven't heard anybody support that anywhere on social media anywhere. I haven't heard it. I mean, just nothing. So I don't know. Is there something going on that I don't know about? I know
I
people
doubt
want
it.
to see
I
the
just think
football
people
again,
just
but
mix sports, to be honest.
do what?
I just think people just mix sports. You know, I know like the MLB has been talking about playing in a couple centralized locations with 6 divisions going down into 3. You know,
Yeah.
playing games in Tampa Bay, Florida,
Yeah.
and Tampa Bay and Arizona. You know, stuff like that. And then I even saw today that the NBA was thinking about hosting games at Disney World or Disneyland, one of those two in Orlando.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it just popped up this morning when I woke up. That it was, you know, a thought that had crossed people's minds. But, you know, I don't think force feeding games down either is going to do anything for anybody too. I mean, for the States, it kind of sucks for basketball and hockey because the playoffs
Yeah.
for most teams are about 10 games away, you know, which
Yeah.
is what, like 2.5 weeks. So,
And the Bruins were good. So
We-
you know, they would have choked in the playoffs, don't get me wrong, but even so, you know.
That's also why there's such a big push, right? So everybody says money, money,
Yeah.
money. Yes, money. 2, don't let a crisis go to waste. This is
Right.
growth, and make no doubt about it. There's people in the Premier League, marketing, corporate, whatever, that is saying, listen, there are no sports going on in the world right now.
yeah.
What if we are the only English language sport broadcasting around the world? How good is
Yeah.
that for our product?
I
If
think
Yeah,
they're
well-
not trying to take advantage of that, they'd be fools.
that's why the NFL drafted so well. They had a monopoly here in America. I mean, it's
Yeah.
right at the right time with free agency and then the draft. There was an increase in 35%. People just want sports. And one
Yeah.
thing I was going to say too is I think I'm against the closed door matches for like West Ham matches, but when it comes to other sports like football and everything, I'm totally fine with that. And I know it might just be a completely different like kind of American sports thing.
Hmm.
Ohio State Buckeyes fan, our head coach Ryan Day has already said they're planning on playing with or without fans, basically saying any football is better than none. So
Yeah,
I mean-
WNBA draft had the same thing. They did theirs virtually too, just like the NFL did, and they had their highest ratings for a draft in their existence. So I think that, you know, just like how you were saying, anything that sports, you know, period, you know, is going to do well. So
Yeah, I have to tell you too, and I don't want to get too far off of our, you know, off of our topic, but
Hmm.
the NFL virtual pandemic draft was amazing.
yeah,
I actually loved it.
It was
Yeah.
fantastic. I have to admit, I don't really usually watch the draft. I don't pay that much attention to it. Like, you know, I'm just when the players, you know, when they're ready to play, I watch them play. But and you can go and take a drink because TCU had 4 or 5 players drafted this year, so I was paying more attention than usual, and it was amazing. I don't know. Roger Goodell just kicked back with the jelly beans or whatever in his living room. I sort of loved it.
Yeah, I know NFL coaches said that they loved it because they didn't have to go in suit and tie. They were just in pajamas and shorts.
Yeah, Andy Reid was like in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts, and you know, they should always do it this way. I don't know. There was kind of a I don't know. There was something about it that was refreshing and different. And I suppose if you did it 10 years running, it'd get old. But it was kind of cool the way they did it. Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Speaking of Ohio, the draft is in Cleveland next year.
Yep, 1 year from today.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that
Well,
I'm a fan.
hopefully it'll be live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Irish Tommy, the Broncos had a good draft.
But the draft should always be in New York so Jets fans can boo their picks. That's the
Oh wow! Did you see what ended up behind Goodell for one of the Jets draft picks?
no.
Yeah. So I don't know how they got away with it, but somebody, instead of a fan, it was just like this massive, huge black guy naked. Like right behind Goodell. Go on Twitter. You can find it pretty
okay,
easily.
I believe you.
And it was the Jets. It was the Jets. This is the first time I'm ever giving the Jets credit for something. That was pretty funny.
Oh,
for
you
them.
have to. The Jets are the. The Jets are the hope. Sorry, Rob. Sorry, buddy. I know. Listen, it's about to get bad in New England. Okay, Brady's gone. And it's about to get bad in New England, so I get that. But yeah, I'm sorry, Rob. But the Jets are the constant source of comedy in the American sports world, anyway. Yeah. So I don't know. I have no idea why we cut off on talking about that. But
My
we
bad.
were on games behind closed doors.
oh, that's right. That's right. Well,
That's
I mean,
my-
you guys know how I feel about it. I know everybody's desperate for sports, begging for sports. To me, there's a real sort of like fairness issue about it and also I think the risk is high. I think it's not just for the players; it's for the staffs, the managers. You got to put these things on TV. You got to have TV people there. Got to have trainers there. There's going to be hundreds of people there, and it's going to be hard to keep them 6 feet apart. Uh, although as some MIT researcher said the other day, the sneeze can travel 27 feet. So just
Yep.
just keep that in mind. Um, why don't we let you guys want to do some hammers polls?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
I haven't done these in a long, long time, and now I got to find where it is.
Yeah,
oh, here it is, right here.
I
Right on top.
agree with Don too as well about the transfer window. I don't think it should open up until you know for sure that football is going to be back. Because what's the point in getting a player to come play for you if he can't even leave his own country to come and take a medical?
Yeah.
Right. No, I think
the banner, by the way, it's the Robert's comments still up.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, you're right. It is.
I'm on public shame the rest of the night for being a Jets fan.
I'm gonna. I don't even know what Charlie's talking about here, but I can't figure out how to take him down unless I put another one up and take it down.
Oh, just
so.
click on it again. There you go.
There we go. Okay. Well, it's scroll. It's anyway. Yeah, gotcha. All right. Thank you for pointing that out. I was totally not paying attention. Yeah. So this is a pretty good one. Although I'm gonna have to go back over to the actual Twitter page to read it because it's too small for me to read on the screen. So several players are out of contract June 2021. I mean, I guess at the tail end of their careers. Of these four, which one do you keep? You have Antonio Snodgrass, Balbuena, and Jack Wilshere.
Too easy.
Yeah, well, is it though? Because I think there's a hard choice between two of those guys. But
Yeah.
anyway, who said two easy? I didn't. Was it Costa? Go ahead, Costa. Go ahead. You can start and go upward this time.
So if you watch the last Friday Night Lights that I was on, I lost in part due to my favoritism to Antonio. But I think that even
Were you one with Ian Bishop? Though? Nobody beats Ian Bishop.
No, I wasn't on that one. I was with
Okay.
I was with Katie K.
Oh, Katie's a
and
powerhouse.
was it Jazz that we were on with? I've done the show twice, so I'm getting it mixed up. But John was there too, and you know what? It was Jay from Philly. It was all Philly versus me, and yeah, they kind of ganged up on me for the Antonio thing.
That's what they do. You can't trust him. You can't trust him.
Within these four picks, like Snodgrass is slow and getting up there. Balbuena's a one-season wonder, and Wilshere, obviously wheelchair. So Antonio's the easy pick here.
I don't think. Okay. Sally, what do you think?
Antonio for me. I think he's just a game changer, and I think honestly, he should be coming off the bench for the last, half an hour and just kind of be that tank, that bulldozer, that kind of, beats down a tired back four. So for me, it'd be Antonio.
All right. Chris, what's your take? Don't be influenced by Rebecca. She says Snodgrass.
Well, I'm between Antonio and Snodgrass, and for me, I have to give it to Antonio purely based on age. That's the only reason I'm going between the two. They both work their asses off. They both are both brilliant on their day, but I think Antonio is just that little bit has the edge just because he's a little bit younger.
John, what's your learned opinion from the city of brotherly love?
I think Sally hit the nail on the head. Antonio's the only one that gives us a different look. He's the only one that gives us a plan B out of all of those players. So if I had to keep one, it'd be him.
I mean, it obviously Antonio and Snodgrass, right? Balbuena fell off in form. Jack Wilshere is permanently disabled or something. Although remember when Balbuena was like a rock solid central defender with Issa, and anyway, that fell apart. I don't know what happened, but and Moyes, from what I've read here and there, seems not to want to keep him anyway. So it's down to Snodgrass and Antonio. I mean, to me, Antonio is a little younger. He's more of a game changer, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a good expression to use, football expression, but he has more impact on a game generally than Snodgrass. I mean, I love Snodgrass though, and I think he's somebody who is durable, and I think he's somebody who always gives maximum effort. Not that Antonio doesn't. Antonio puts out tremendous effort, but he gets hurt a lot. What is Antonio? He's got to be 4 or 5 years younger than Snodgrass, right? Snodgrass is 31.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5. I think he's.
So it's a significant, I mean, I'll be the only contrarian here to make a case for Snodgrass, only because, again, he's consistent. He can play 90 minutes. Antonio almost never does. I think his injury record has generally been better than Antonio's, so he's available more often. You know what you're getting from him. He's a good set piece taker. I mean, I think the answer is Antonio, but I'll go with Snodgrass just to be the only one who doesn't say Antonio. If that makes sense.
Nice.
However, I do hope we can keep them both. Moyes wants to keep Snodgrass for 2 more years from what I've read. That sounds like a lot. What do you guys think?
That makes me tired just thinking about that. I mean, Snodgrass too, he's another person I don't think should be playing a full 90 minutes. Maybe unless it's like a cup game or something. But he has much better technical skills than I think Antonio does, but he just it pains me to watch him play sometimes. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a 2 years sounds like a big commitment to me, right? At his age, I mean, for the position he plays, for generally being out on the wing the way he is, and the running he has to do. I can see another season. I'm not sure committing to 2, but I don't know if it doesn't really matter.
He can't keep up with anybody either.
So we did it for Zabaleta. We can do it for Snodgrass.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Moyes sees him as a clubhouse guy, right?
Yeah.
And you have to remember that it's kind of like the Kevin Nolan, Sam Allardyce relationship there between the two of them. I think he's going to hold on to him a little bit too long, even though he can't necessarily play at that level anymore, just because of how well they know each other.
And they're the only ones who can understand each other because they're both Scots.
Correct.
So I'm sure nobody knows what Moyes is the only one who can understand what Snodgrass says. He probably has to translate everything. So yeah, I mean, my head says Antonio, my heart says Snodgrass, only because I just love his effort and I love his general durability. I hope we keep them both, honestly. But I don't know if I'd keep Snodgrass. I don't know if I'd commit to Snodgrass for 2 more whole seasons. Then again, he may be 40 by the time we have Premier League football again anyway. So it's kind of hard to say. You know what? Let's do this next one because it's sitting there and it's already been decided by a pretty big margin. But I want to see if you're thinking of the same thing.
Yeah.
So if we could only buy players from one of these 4 leagues in the next transfer window, which one would you buy from? We have the Championship, Bundesliga, La Liga, and Ligue 1. Everybody on here, we have 474 votes, and most people say Championship. What do you guys say? Why don't we go back down this time? Why don't we start with you, John, and go back down the poll?
What's the question? If we could only buy from one of those leagues?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, okay, so really the question is, which one do you prefer to buy from, right? Which one do you think is the best one to buy from?
Wherever the best player is. I couldn't care less what league they come from.
Oh, come on. We haven't had football
correct answer.
There's been no football in like 6 months. Just name a league.
Oh God! I mean, you can make an argument for all of them, right? Championship. We've had Antonio and Cresswell have been moderately successful on our team. They've come up from the Championship. Bundesliga. Haller is our top goal scorer this season, although many would say he may have underperformed. Ligue 1. Actually, Ligue 2 was where we got Sacco, I think. So maybe even extend that one down a league. But La Liga,
go down and buy from.
Is that where we got Fornals from? Because if that's where we got Fornals from, we need to keep doing that.
That's where we got Fornals from. Yeah. Where did he come from? Didn't he come from?
Oh, Villarreal. No,
Villarreal. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I think it's Villarreal.
I was going to say Valencia, but that's too big a club, and that's the wrong V.
Yeah, I mean, they've all got their advantages. People say Bundesliga is probably the most similar in style of the foreign leagues. Championship, you know, those players fight and grit, and they know what they're getting themselves into.
Right.
I can make an argument for all of them, honestly. But Fornals has been my star buy. So with that, I will place my trust in La Liga.
So our Arsenal fan asks, why would you want players from the Championship instead of a top 5 European league? Because they'll come to West Ham is one answer, and because we've gotten a lot of West Ham type players from the
Because we don't have Arsenal money. That's why.
Right, exactly. And we've gotten a lot of hardworking sort of grifters. Is that the word I'm looking for the Championship? Hardworking guys. I don't know, Chris. What do you think?
I agree with the poll. I think I'd say Championship as well. Seeing as, especially if we can keep getting players like Bowen. For the limited time that we saw Bowen out there, I mean, he looked like he was a star in the making. So if we can keep buying players like that, I don't care where they come from. If they come from the Championship, awesome.
Yeah, he did look really good. And one of the things that upsets me the most about No More Football is that he was really rounding into form and we had to stop. So, Sully, what do you think?
I can understand why the Championship was so popular. I think one, obviously, with it being an English sport, or poll, that people are most familiar with players in the Championship. But I think the issue with the remaining 3 is kind of the same. How your best players are going to be in such a concentration of the top clubs that if you're going to get somebody, you're going to have to possibly overpay for them because you're going to have bigger clubs trying to get that person too, especially in the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
All the best players play for like 3 teams, and in League One, it's like all the best players play for one team, pretty much. La Liga has a little bit more diversity, but even then, you're only talking about 4 or 5 teams.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're approaching those leagues, you're going to have to look at those teams where you have a player who's performing well but is unhappy in his current situation. Whereas in the Championship, you could have somebody who is happy but just wants to play Premier League football. I think that's an easier of a sway for somebody who's already in England than it is to say, hey, you're on a good team, you might be playing European football, but come to West Ham and help us get that European football. I think the argument's easier for the Championship.
Yeah, I think just getting into the Premier League is a big argument there. Costa, what's your take?
Well, for me, it's about what kind of budget does West Ham have, and it's also about it's also like the how often do we actually get a player from these leagues? So the Bundesliga, I can't remember a super successful player. The last guy I remember is like Thomas Hitzelsberger, a signing. And the thing is, if Moyes wants to go young and we're looking to buy players in the 18 to 25 range, Germany keeps its best players. Dortmund, Munich, Leipzig identify the best young German talent early, and they lock them up, and they don't come over here. It's super rare. Like, I can only think of Mikhail Ballack as like a German star who came over here and had an impact. La Liga is too top heavy, and it's not that different from what I just said about Germany. Is those players are identified really early. Spanish players do have success here, but I think you'll find that there are Spanish players playing in Italy and France and other places that you can sign them from. I think in my life as a West Ham fan, I've seen too many flops signed from the Championship. And yes, Bowen's great. Antonio's great. Cresswell's been all right. But I feel like for every Antonio, there's a couple Henry Lansburys and players that aren't going to make that cut. I wasn't going to go there, but John wants
Charlie,
to poke. John's poking the bear. So when I think of the fact that French clubs tend to be poor, France actually has the closest thing to a salary cap. I feel like there are a lot of gems in France that would love to play for West Ham and then make that move to Arsenal or Chelsea. So Issa Diop is the most recent example. But when you look at where they get Conte from, like, he wasn't super heard of before that. Obviously Diafra Sakho, Morgan Amalfitano, like we've had a few hits. Mohamed Diame, I think, came from Wigan, but I feel like we have good relationships in France. Like, it's one of the few areas that Sullivan hasn't like soured with his BS, because they're willing to take a weird like transfer deal where it's like 5 million here, then 7 million there. Like, they'll work with that because they really need that money. And that's how we got Payet, for example. you know.
Yep.
So
I'm 100% with you, Kostya. It's funny because I didn't think anybody would say Ligue 1, but that's absolutely my choice. I mean, obviously John's right. Wherever the player is, that's where we should go. But if you're going to focus on one particular league, to me, the thing about Ligue 1 is, first of all, just look at the French national team, probably
Yeah.
still the best in the world right now.
Yeah.
And consistently one of the best in the world over the last 20 years. You know, there've been a few dips here and there, but you go from the 98 World Cup to 2018 World Cup, and they had a Euro in there. They had a World Cup final. They lost in there. I mean, 20 years of producing really the world's best footballers pretty consistently. Plus, you know, with Ligue 1, you have a situation where the best players in France leave the country. They don't stay in the country. And they play all over Europe. So what happens with these, except for PSG, of course. Yes, take another drink. But we know about them because they have the money. Everybody else, though, everybody else has to settle with, right. Everybody else has to settle for native French players. So what happens is you get these young French guys, and they end up playing in Europe for, you know, Marseille and Lyon and you know, some of the like Lille and some of the bigger clubs that you know that are in European competitions year after year, and they're playing against the best in the world, and they're kind of blooding themselves, you know. And the French league, to me, produces talent in part because you get, you know, the best players in the country don't play in the league. The best players in the country are elsewhere. So these young guys get a chance to play at the top level in their domestic league. And then some of them get a chance to play in Europa League and Champions League against the best players in the world. And, you know, there's a development that happens there that I think doesn't happen in England, where you have the best English players, you know, crowding out the younger guys to some extent in the Premier League. Same thing in Germany and elsewhere. Plus, France is a country where, again, unless you're playing for one of the top club or maybe one of the top 2 or 3 clubs, those players will jump at the chance to get out of France and move to the Premier League. Like, that's a massive opportunity for them, you know.
Absolutely.
So I, you know, we know we got an Arsenal guy on tonight. You know, Arsene Wenger built multiple championship, not championship, but title-winning teams, you know, out of the French league, basically, or largely out of the French league. So we know that, you know, we know that it's possible. You look at the guys out there, you know, I think about the guys who came through Saint Etienne, even, you know, like Aubameyang, guys like that, who were players for what is these days a kind of a middling French club. There's a lot of talent coming out of that country, and I think we should tap into it more. But I mean, you know, again, we're not the only ones looking there. I'm sure. So why don't we got a few minutes left, and I don't really have anything else to talk about because we haven't had football in 6 years. So I guess let's finish by talking about a couple of guys here, Declan Rice and Issa Diop. We could talk about Declan first. I mean, the Hammers poll question here is, you know, what does he do? Does he sign a new contract? Does he go somewhere else? If so, where does he go? You all have seen all the rumors, and you know, as I said this on Twitter sometime earlier this week, if it's in, as I've always said, if it's in the British press, it will not happen. So all the rumors about Declan Rice to Manchester United or Chelsea, now that they're in the Sun and the Mirror and all that, I know it won't happen, so it doesn't worry me at all, you know. But do you think Declan comes back to us, signs a new contract, is going to be a West Ham career player for a few more seasons, or do you think he's gone in the next transfer window? And if so, where do you think he goes? And whoever wants to jump in, just jump in.
I think it all depends on, like, well, let's say the season played out, right, and we got relegated. I think he leaves. If we stay up, maybe he stays. I'm trying to find out how long his current contract is, because I know he's just trying to re-sign. But I know
I think relegation is. I mean, that's a nuclear bomb. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think if that happens, everybody's gone, and we know that. So, you know, the only player we're going to have left is Roberto and Mark Noble, of course.
I think it was 3 years, Sally, right?
Yeah.
It was around 30-something thousand.
Yeah,
3 years.
Current contract is up in 2024, so he's here for a while. Well, he's signed to be here for a while. So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with that, I think obviously if he keeps performing at the way that he is, you know, we're going to have to end up paying him what people are going to try to get him in transfers, you know, and right. I think that might be an issue too, is can we pay him the money that he's going to end up being earned or owed one day? So I mean, that's a question in itself. I think he'll stay as long as he can, but I also don't think that anybody, unless it's like an ugly departure, anybody's going to be mad at him for leaving, because we all saw that he was a star, since the second he started playing.
Yeah.
And I think every season that he stays with us will kind of be a surprise, but it'll also be one thing that, it's like, great, thanks for playing for the Badger, for the team. We appreciate it. But if
isn't that the problem though, Sally? Because we can afford to pay him what he's worth. Instead, we pissed around, pissed him off, held him and his agent to the last minute, gave him a contract in the 30,000 range, fucked around with Lanzini, put him up to 100,000, took both of our left backs and re-signed them to 3-year deals, and they're both shit.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that there's
what are we
there's
doing?
An issue with that too, is that you have some of our most paid players don't play, or they're just not good. To where you have some of your better players aren't really making much. And that will definitely be an issue, not just for Rice, but for if Fornals wants to stay and he comes up for contract negotiations. If he keeps going up at a high level, or let's say if Bowen stays for a year or two, and then he's going to get owed money. So I mean, it is the world that we live in, to where people are going to they're going to want to go where the money is, and that's completely fine. But at the same time, I think you're going to have to start showing the players that are worth money that that they're worth it, instead of like, oh, we'll give you a discount, but we'll go ahead and give somebody who hasn't played for 2 years a contract extension for money that he's still not going to use when he doesn't play. So,
yeah, I wonder too, how much of an impact European football, or the opportunity for European football has. That won't be happening at West Ham, anytime soon.
At all next season.
Well, that's the other thing, is it might not happen at all. Right.
Yeah.
It might not happen anywhere. So maybe in a way,
be a mulligan. But yeah, overall, if we don't get consistent top 7 finishes, it's not going to matter, because people aren't going to stay long anyway.
In a way, I think the point Chris makes is actually pretty good. If there's no European football anyway, then it's less of a draw for our players to go somewhere else to play European football if you can't do it anyway, because of virus concerns. But that's the biggest. I agree with you, Sally, 100% on the money. I agree with you too, John. It's another botched effort by the board. I think, to me, though, it's more than just about paying him. And I think we should pay him. We do need to pay him. I fear that we won't. But I think beyond that, again, with these players, I mean, when they have the chance to play Champions League, that's what they want to do. And anybody would. And it's a tough sell to say to Declan Rice, well, you can be captain at West Ham, and maybe once in a while we'll finish 7th, and if Liverpool win the league and the cup, then we'll go to Europe, and you can go off and play in Estonia in July. It's a tough sell. I mean, it is. So.
No, you're right. I mean, you get a much bigger global exposure too. If you go to a team that plays Champions League, or the later stages of the FA and stuff like that. Which I think that plays a big part of it too, because what kid wouldn't want to, what kid doesn't grow up sitting here saying, "Oh, I'm gonna hear that Champions League music one day and score the game-winning goal." I mean,
especially
we're
these
not
days.
at that level. So
especially these days, when these players, the FA Cup doesn't mean what it used to the players. I think it does to the fans, but even then, I think it's older fans. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think it's older fans who have more of a nostalgic attachment to it. What's the minimum you would take for him? How much would we're supposed to be skint once again. Our billionaire pornographer owner is once again skint somehow. So apparently we're going to sell him for like £30 and a couple of and a bag of balls, as they say here in the US. But what's the minimum you would take for him? What's your price on him if we end up selling him?
Going back to your ownership thing a little bit here, we're a sleeping giant. And the reason we're sleeping is because of our ownership. And when I look at Rice and Diop, they're 21 and 23.
Yep.
How long have they played for us, like in the first team? 2 years and 3 years?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think so, yeah.
So,
Joe
Cole, Frank Lampard, Rio Ferdinand, Jermaine Defoe, all played for us for 5 years. Rio actually played for 6 years before their big transfers out. So I'm seeing a 2-year window. And then I'm trying to be optimistic, because in 2 years, supposedly, from what I've read, 2023 is the year that the tax on the sale of the club is completely lifted. So
yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
In a dream world, you have this perfect scenario where we're bought around the same time that Jopper Rice might leave. And then you get this new owner come in, say, I'm going to give you a new contract. I'm going to immediately invest. The training facilities will be a lot nicer. And we're going to bring in players that are already playing European football so we can qualify this year. Then they stay. That's the only way. Because Mourinho's after Job. And Chelsea's
I think that's a beautiful.
Rice, so.
That's a beautiful fantasy.
So
I live by that fantasy every year. If I'm having a bad day, I just think about when the tax is lifted.
Newcastle won the lottery.
Advocate. Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
Sally, what'd you say?
I was going to say, so just to play devil's advocate with that real quick, Coach Joe, let's say you are Declan Rice, Issa Diop, and you're here in 2023, right? Let's say, we've had between 8 and 10 finishes, right?
Yeah.
And then the new owner comes in. I think if a new owner comes in, it has to be quick, right? Because you want to come in and you want the summer to get the team how you want to do it. And I think if you come in and you're making promises X, Y, and Z, you're going to have to show that X, Y, and Z are getting done, because these owners came in and made promises A, B, and C, and we haven't seen anything from it. It's outside of the move to the new stadium. That's really the only promise that's really been fulfilled. So I think if you're a player, you obviously can extend yourself out. Like, okay, I'll give you. You're new. You have all these great ideas. We'll see what happens. And then maybe if a year and nothing really comes of it, or there's no, let's say ground hasn't been broke on a new facility or something, I think then maybe they leave. But yeah, it's a lot of question marks.
It's all about their net worth. It's all about their net worth. If Declan can see their net worth on Google is $2 billion, he might hesitate. If it's $50 billion, not gonna hesitate. Think about, I don't know who was playing for Manchester City when Robinho suddenly showed up. Okay.
Yeah,
but if there were any
talented,
if there were any young talented City players who had just finished around 10th 2 years in a row, they were wait a minute. Shit, Robinho's here. Okay, now maybe I got to stay now. And you have to make that impact immediately.
Thomas is right about this. This Newcastle thing is very bad news for us. It's bad news for football in general. It's bad news for the Premier League. Nothing against Newcastle as a club. It's just that another club getting this buyout hurts us, and it hurts the competitiveness of the league again, I think. Plus, and I've said this before, and it's maybe not popular. I just, some of these regimes are very unpalatable that are buying into Premier League football. Saudi regime has a lot to answer for around the world. I know we're not perfect in this country either, but a lot to answer for. Anyway, I don't know, John. What do you think about Deck? What would you take for him if we sold him? What would you take for him?
It's fine. So I've asked this question a lot, I think, a few times on Friday Night Likes, and generally it comes in that 70 to 90 million range. I'm going to go with 150 million, and that sounds absurd.
Yes, no, do it.
But that's the kind of price tag you got to put on him. He's the future of our club.
He is.
But you've also got to bump his pay. If they were smart, they would have stuck him in at 50 grand instead of 30 and given him incremental steps every year. 70 after that, 90 after that, 110 after that. Yep. Just keep fulfilling, keep being loyal. We'll be loyal to you. He is the absolute future that you have to build the rest of this team around for the next 5 to 10 years if you can hang on to him. The kid has ambition through the roof, as he should. He's that good. And we need to match his ambition. It's not the other way around. We need to do stuff professionally. And if we match his ambition, he could lead us to unbelievable accomplishments. We may see an FA Cup. We may see European football. He's that good. And I think over the next 5 years, he's going to prove that he's that good. And other players are going to want to play with him. Because you already see him statistically, he's at the top of the charts. He's in either first place, second, or third for everything that he does. I mean, the kid he's that good.
I think selling him would have the same impact as selling Rio Ferdinand, selling Frank Lampard. I think it would be devastating for us. I think it would be devastating for the other players at the club who know how good he is. I think it would be devastating for the fans. Let me just tell you how I feel about this quickly. This is a good question. I mean, how is it bad for the Premier League to have all this foreign money coming in? It proves the quality of the league and more contenders going for top spots. This is what H. Huss is saying to us. I mean, okay, but for those of us who like a Leicester story once in a while, for those of us who like some competitiveness outside of 5 or 6 clubs, it's every time a massive buyout comes in, it just widens the gap between the top few and everybody else. It's basically like the top 6, 7, maybe. Everybody else is just in a relegation battle, and that's not very interesting to me. I prefer a little bit of parity, which is, I know we'll never go back to the 70s when, Nottingham Forest won the second division, won the first division, and then won 2 consecutive European Cups. That's never going to happen again, unless it's because of a massive, buyout. But I would love to go
Lee,
back to the days when you'd have some variety in who actually finishes near the top.
Lee, you know what scares me the most about all these big buyouts? I think maybe it gets to the point, right? And they spoke about years ago with the Champions League and teams breaking off and making a European Super League. The Premier League brand is bigger than the Champions League, and I think the weight is probably pulling back that way. But does it get to the point where it goes similar to American sports, where there's so much invested, so many billions, that you just get rid of relegation altogether, and there's a breakaway league of those top clubs because the owners and the investors have too much money in it to even risk relegation anymore?
I think that's a really valid point, and because we've talked about, I say we, not here, but people have talked about a Super League now for years. I mean, all the time I've been following English football, I don't know, 20 years since I started watching the highlight show on, Fox Sports in the late 90s, early 2000s. There's been talk about this. Oh, the big clubs are going to break off and form a Super League. But then the question always was, who finishes last, who gets relegated, and where to? But I think, John, that's a really good point. If you take, the top 5 clubs in England and the top 3 in Spain and the top 3 in Germany, whatever, and they all get together, and then it becomes like it's just the NFL at that point, and it's stale. Well, it's kind of stale, and it's, again, we know as West Ham fans, the most exciting battles in football are relegation battles. I mean, a championship race like the one we had last season, a title race like between Liverpool and Manchester, that's really, really, really unusual to have it come down to the last day or the last week. Doesn't happen very often. Relegation battles are, that's what gets you going. And if you lose that, then it's baseball. Who cares?
Yeah, I think kind of right now you have a couple of battles. I think that are always pretty fun. Obviously, relegations are always the most interesting, and then you have the battle for top 7, and then obviously Champions League is more or less the same teams. But so I guess here's kind of on the same point of Newcastle. Let's say they do, the new owners come in, and let's say in 3 years they're permanently fighting for top 6, top 5 spots, right?
Yeah.
Not only does that necessarily hurt teams like West Ham, but I think that would also hurt teams like Sheffield United, because
of course it would.
That's been a great story too. As much as you love to root for your own team, watching Leicester do what they did was great. There's always that one team that surprises everybody. It was almost Southampton a couple years ago when actually Leicester won, because Southampton was, they were playing really well too. It would suck. Granted, them getting new owners is never a sure thing, because even with Manchester City, they got new owner. Well, it took them 2-3 years to be competitive for Champions League football,
which they've still never won the Champions League. And
that's which is really crazy. I'm just saying for those spots,
and neither has PSG. PSG haven't come close. Manchester City have come closer, but league titles. League titles are great, but that's not why they buy these clubs. They buy these clubs to win Champions League. That's why they do it.
I guess another kind of, now that you mentioned that, let's say there is a Super League, would you only still have the same couple of teams winning that? Like your Barcelonas, your Juventus, because like you said, PSG haven't done anything. They've been dominant for a while now. Same thing, Manchester City, they haven't. Liverpool just won theirs for the first time in a while. So I don't know if making the Super League. I don't know if Go ahead.
Yeah, for the Super League, wouldn't you want to relegate 4 or 5, and then the winner of France, Germany, Spain, and England all go up to the Super League, and then have it rotate that way?
Yeah, logistically, with regards to relegation, it just doesn't seem feasible.
For a Super League? Why do you say that?
I don't think you're going to want, and I think John's point, sorry, Chris, but you may have been getting ready to say this. I think John's point is these owners of these massive clubs are not going to accept relegation. It's why there's no relegation in MLS, because you can't go to Bob Kraft and say if your team sucks too much, you're going to be playing the Carolina Railhawks next season in front of 3,000 people.
Yeah, that was
You can't
exactly
do
my
that
point.
when he's put millions of dollars into the club. You can't. He's going to tell you to get bent. You know.
Right.
That was one of the things I was thinking too. I mean, there's a reason that one of the reasons that MLS isn't as widely respected is because there's no fight for those who are the worst teams, because there's no chance of them going down. So
Okay,
But
but
the formula for MLS is pretty crap too. I don't like the playoff system for it.
I don't either. I don't
So-
like playoffs at all.
guys, but what if
Except for in the
Bill
championship.
Gates buys Lee's favorite club, Saint Etienne, and now they're massively
To be
rich?
fair,
How do they get
French
into
club.
the Super League?
Oh yeah.
Did they get into the
that's fair.
Once you have a super billionaire owner, how do
New
you get in there?
franchise.
Is it just by, oh, I have 10 billion, here's my bank account, now let me in? Like, how does it?
Yeah.
I
Well, I
think-
mean, that's
yeah,
just like
yeah.
Red Bull out
That's
in
how
Germany.
MLS works.
I mean,
That's how MLS works. That's how Red Bull. You buy the
Yeah.
players. I think, Costa. You buy the players. You walk in and you slap 200 million pound transfer fees down on the world's top players, or more. I mean, if it becomes an arms race basically, which it already is, really.
yeah.
I mean, what did West Ham sell Rio Ferdinand for 20 years ago? It was like
Not
15
enough.
million pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, a British transfer record. And even if you count for inflation over 20
18
years,
million. 18 million.
18 million. It's not. I mean, what is 18 million pounds 20 years later? It's not 150 million. You
It's a
know.
player that's sitting on
He
the bench.
left for
is what that
30
is.
million 2 years later, which is the ridiculous part.
That's why I mean the inflation is insane. I think it's a good question, but I think if you're Bill Gates and you buy Saint Etienne, which, by the way, Bill, if you're going to buy a club, make it West Ham, okay, please. Saint Etienne, I do love Saint Etienne, but not anything like I love West Ham. So this is where you want to go, right here.
On the podcast before, we've talked about it before, we want Elon Musk to buy West Ham so that way we can have SpaceX as our sponsor.
I
That'd
would
be
rather
cool. Or
listen.
Tesla.
I've said this before, and there are
That'd be a nice jersey
moral
logo.
there are moral issues with billionaires of any kind. A lot of them. However, I would sure rather it be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates than some of the families who run really oppressive regimes in other parts of the world. I don't know. I know that probably doesn't sound very good for me to say, but that's how I feel.
Listen, Elon Musk would have had the Premier League season back already. He said all this coronavirus was going to end in like mid-May.
Yes, he did, and now he thinks we should, liberate the states or whatever. I'm not saying these guys are balanced. I'm just saying that
Well, that's what we currently have is an unbalanced chairman. It's just replacing one with the other.
exactly. Listen, as much as I hate Gold Sullivan Brady and I hate what they've done to the club, I will say that I would never ever stop supporting West Ham. It would be a moral quandary for me to support a club owned by a regime like the Saudi regime. I'm sorry, it would. That's how I feel. I think they have a lot to answer for in terms of global terrorism, in terms of the way that regime treats women, the way that regime treats foreigners. I mean, the way they manipulate global markets. I just think it's something that would trouble me. I guess while I was out celebrating winning Champions League, I would have a little pang of guilt.
I don't disagree.
Do what?
I don't disagree. I mean, the World Cup coming up in Qatar, I think, is a disaster.
They're
Yeah,
using
that was-
literal
that was
slave
crazy.
labor. But listen, and I don't want to talk politics here, but this is not politics, right? They're using literal slave labor to build those stadiums.
Yep.
They're bringing people in from India.
The death toll at over 3,000 people.
Right, they're
Yeah.
passing out and dying in the sun.
I mean, it's a death toll similar to the number of deaths from September 11th. Speaking of the Saudis, it's a death toll. Well, it's similar, and they're bringing people in from India. They're taking their passports. They're not letting them back out of the country, and they're paying them virtually nothing. And they're cramming. I mean, this is basically modern slavery. I mean, the conditions are not dissimilar to what African Americans faced in this country 150 years ago. I don't think that's a ridiculous thing to say. This is modern slavery, and it's completely unacceptable. And so I would have a problem. Again, I'm not going to support West Ham, but it would bother me. It would bother me if my club suddenly shot up in the league table and was a Champions League club because we had like blood money backing us.
One thing too that's pretty crazy. If let's say the construction of the stadiums was completely kosher, it's just you're moving it from the summertime to the wintertime.
Well, it definitely
That's
wouldn't
right
be
in the middle of the
kosher,
season.
Sully.
No, right? Yeah,
It
you know
might be
what
halal.
I mean, the fact that you'd be moving it from the summertime to the middle of the league season, that messes everything up too.
That's
Just because it's
terrible.
yeah, I mean, and that should be a reason itself to not give it to I guess Middle Eastern countries is just because it's too hot. I mean,
It's too
I've been
hot.
there during that time, and it is no joke. Like,
So you've been
it
there.
is.
So where have you traveled? Tell me where you
It's hot in the
traveled.
winter time too, isn't it?
What's that? Oh yeah,
Like, in the
wintertime.
wintertime, it
Yeah,
only goes down to 110.
so I've passed through Qatar, and I was there September timeframe, late September, early October for a handful of days, and yeah, it was no joke, and it was crazy. Obviously, there's sand everywhere, so you walk outside, and the sand is just as bright as the sky, because it's just reflecting the sunlight.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're outside for like 5 minutes, even in shade, and you're feeling it. Like it is not a joke.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this too, Sally. So when you're in a country like that at that time of year, are people like jogging in the middle of the day?
Well, I mean, Grant, I can't necessarily speak for the locals because I wasn't out and about in the city. I mean,
Yeah.
for the military, yeah, people be running around outside just because maybe not in the middle of the day, but during dusk and
Right.
probably early morning. Yes,
But
for that
you're
situation.
soldiers, and it's a different. That's part of the duty that you have.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, you'll go out and you'll do it. I mean, I would assume that locals would, especially in the middle of the day. But yeah, I mean, with the time of the day that it would be for that, I mean, and that one thing too, you'd have to worry about is sandstorms. Unless every stadium that they're playing in is going to be a covered dome, like sandstorms are crazy too.
Yeah, the haboobs, isn't that what they call them?
I believe so.
That's what they call them in West Texas, and I think they got the name from that part of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like seeing a wall of sand just approach you. It's a very crazy thing.
I'm all for everybody in the world getting to experience World Cup football at some point. I don't want to. I don't think it should always be in Europe or South America or North America. I think it should be. I think South Africa, the tournament itself wasn't great, but it was great that it was held there.
Yeah.
Same thing with Japan and Korea. Not a great tournament, not their fault. Great that it was held there. Really well organized. Everything went really well. Glad those things happened. The problem I have is with the Qatari regime itself, and also, as you said, Sally. I mean, it's a summer tournament. It's been a summer tournament since when was the first World Cup? 1930, something like that. I mean, like 100 years basically. And now it's going to move into the middle of the league season. It's just the whole thing is just a mess. But that's my rant, which I hope doesn't come off as racist in any way, because I am not. I have no opposition to people of any. It's the regimes I oppose, not.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does. I mean, there's a big push for sports washing, right? Isn't that what they're calling it? With a lot of regimes, that slightly nefarious buying up a lot of sports competitions and getting a lot of eyes to make it look as if they're okay. But that's somebody in FIFA got paid off.
Oh yeah,
somebody in FIFA always gets paid off.
And the reason why the FBI was investigating it or investigating FIFA.
Oh, of course. The corruption is rampant. We know that. It was probably Michel Platini who got paid off. And
let's also mention, right, so the bid was originally awarded in the summertime. That's insane. Right. It's only from the opposition they've decided to move it to winter.
Right.
So somebody thought football in 120 degrees Fahrenheit was a good idea.
Yeah. Were they just going to pump like $500K worth of air conditioning every game? Like, what were they going to do?
That's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what they said they're
going to do.
You'd have to pump air conditioning in. Not only that, but you'd have water breaks. You'd have to do that too.
Right, but it's different to air condition little apartments or condos, or to air condition a stadium in the winter compared to like when it's 120 out. Like that requires way more kilowatts.
Yeah, well, and one thing too, Lee, to kind of expand on the point that you were saying, it's great to have it move around the world. Obviously, for the World Cup, that would be great. But I think as great as it would be to, sometimes host in South America or wherever the case may be, those places have to be set up to be able to do that. If you're only going to not England, but somewhere in Europe, and you're going to the U.S. and then you're going to I don't know, back to Europe or something, if they're set up to be able to host those kind of competitions because the infrastructure is better, then I think that makes sense because, I know for Brazil, the money did a lot for the community. But I mean, if you're a player, a world-class player, and you're sitting there staying in the shack, or something of that nature. I don't know how it was set up in Brazil. I'm just saying,
No,
I don't think it helps.
I think you're right. I mean, Brazil is still the first nation of football. I mean, and it made sense to host a World Cup in Brazil, but they did some things that were maybe not super smart. I mean, they built that stadium in the Amazon. I can't remember the name of the city, but it has no professional club, and they couldn't even get supplies by road to where the stadium was. They had to actually, when the roads ended, they had to send them up the river and actually get the supplies for the stadium, like off a barge. That thing will never be used again. I forget the name of the city, but I think the U.S. might have played there.
Manaus, was it?
Manaus, yeah. That'll never be used again. That stadium will rot. It's just stupid to do that. So, and that wasn't, and again, they were in like jungle heat in the summer, having to take water breaks and everything else. So I didn't think that was great. And yeah, you're right. They've got to be, they've got to be set up, but certainly, the Qatar thing, obviously to me seems like the product of, corruption and so I if we're going to get bought out by a billionaire, I don't care, where the billionaire is from. I just hope it's somebody who has, at least a decent human rights record.
You stick that one on Hammers Posley. Who's your favorite billionaire?
Well, it used to be Richard Branson. For me, I loved Richard Branson, but then he pulled this thing where he furloughed his workers, and he's, wanting to take money from the government. He's disappointed me in this whole COVID crisis. But if you remember when he owned a Formula One team, they just destroyed everybody because they had the most money to spend on cars. I think that was when Jenson Button won his championship, and he's never won anything else. But they stuck him in the, at the time, the finest and most expensive cars made. And so who's my favorite billionaire? I don't know. I like Bill Gates, I guess, right? I mean, I used to cover Microsoft. I used to write for a magazine that covered Microsoft. I never got to meet him, but I did go to a press conference with him one time where there were only about 15 or 20 people in the room. So,
Maybe we should get Mr. Dyson, then the stadium won't be the only thing that sucks.
I met Michael Bloomberg many years ago when I was working in New York. I met him very, very briefly, obviously, but he's a billionaire. He could, that'd be fine. I'd be okay with Bloomberg doing it. He blew all his money trying to be president, though. That
I was going to say he spent $1 billion in just a few months running for president
to win a primary in American Samoa. So that's about the best he did. Vince McMahon, sure. Why not Vince McMahon? Sure.
No, absolutely not. He has
Definitely
two failed XFL leagues.
So and I don't think he's like a true billionaire. He's barely got $1 billion.
The XFL was gonna make it if it hadn't been for COVID-19.
It probably would have.
It was picking up steam.
If anybody from the WWE is going to buy West Ham, let it be Triple H because he's actually a fan.
That's true. Although those guys, they have money, but they don't have that kind of money,
No, yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying.
No, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean,
someone said Steve Ballmer.
No, not Steve Ballmer. No.
Why? What's wrong with him?
But Steve Ballmer almost destroyed Microsoft. Believe me, trust me when I say this. All right.
Yeah, but he spends a lot of money on the Clippers. I mean, who cares about the Microsoft part?
I spent 10 years working for a company that made a lot of money covering Microsoft. We were not owned or associated with Microsoft in any way. This was a company that covered Microsoft. I wrote millions of words about Microsoft and Steve Ballmer, and I'm telling you, Steve Ballmer is a disaster as a CEO. I'm just telling you this. I know he spends money on the Clippers, but believe me, you don't want that guy around.
Yeah, Clippers haven't really done anything since he's owned them either. So
no, they haven't, and they won't. No, Ballmer's he's a disaster. Please,
they only just got Kawhi Leonard. Give them a chance. Give him a little time. I don't know. I'm just thinking that he's kind of has this wholesome thing to him where he dances really awkward and he wears cardigans. And
would you take Mark Cuban?
Oh yes, in a heartbeat.
Sure.
I actively like Mark Cuban. I'm a fan of Mark Cuban. Yeah. Oh, I think he'd be great. Dude. Let me just tell you that having grown up in Dallas, and I'm not a big basketball guy and I'm not a Mavericks fan, but the Mavericks were garbage for many years, with the exception of a couple of years in the 80s when they had good teams. They were awful. I mean, awful before he bought them. The fact that he brought a championship to the Dallas Mavericks, that dude could do anything. I mean, if he could
Right.
get the Mavericks win the NBA championship, then he could.
Multiple too, yeah.
Yeah, and he could get a league title for West Ham. I totally believe it.
Tim
Yeah.
says Dana White.
I don't. Is he a billionaire? He might be.
He'd be
doing
close
the,
to it if he wasn't.
He's got to be close to it. But the thing is, there's billionaires like there's Sullivan billionaires where it's like all tied up in real estate, and they have like £1 billion and 1 cent in the bank, which there's still a lot of money. But but then there's these oil billionaires. Those they have unlimited money. They just print money. There is a difference between the
I know
two.
the UFC is probably $1 billion company or $1 billion brand. I just don't
I'm
think
sure it's
he is.
multi-billion. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure. Yeah. Here we go. This is who you need right there. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. How do you guys maybe too young to even know who that is?
I think that's the one thing that us, the West Ham and Arsenal fans, can agree is our ownership hasn't been the greatest. And I can say that too for Arsenal because Steve Kroenke owns teams in Colorado.
That's right. He
And,
does. Yeah, he owns the Rapids, doesn't he?
Yeah, there's a huge Arsenal badge in the Rapid Stadium. Dick's Sporting Goods Park is right there. And we have a cannon in there too, just because. So whenever we score, the cannon goes off just, for the gunners and whatever. It's stupid, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
They actually Arsenal played Colorado in the preseason this past year. They try to hype it up, pretty big deal, but Arsenal won like 3-0. It was a joke of a game.
They shoot the cannon for every goal?
Every home goal, every Rapids goal, they'll blast the cannon. And the jersey is actually the colors. I don't have
the West Ham colors
jersey with me, but the colors the colors are West Ham colors. Funny
enough. Yeah, the color in blue. They're nice. They're sharp. Yeah, they look good.
Yeah, they have a pretty sweet all white third kit too, which is pretty sexy if I do say so myself. But
do you have one?
I don't have one. No, I don't know why I don't have one, but
doesn't matter.
But yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just listen. Billionaires are always going to bring some sort of baggage, but I mean, I prefer to have a billionaire from a country where women are allowed to drive. Like, for instance, just throw that out there. Also, one that's not a major sponsor of global terrorism. But anyway, that seems like a fine note to end on. Do you guys want to? It's been a good hour and 20 minutes. I've really enjoyed this a lot. It's been a lot of fun. I haven't done this in a week, and it's been great. You guys, anybody got anything else you want to throw in or talk about before we go?
Yeah, one small thing. A German football club is allowing their fans to put cardboard cutouts of themselves in the stadium to avoid empty seats. And it's Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Oh no, Borussia Mönchengladbach.
That's where Reece Oxford went for a year.
Yeah, so
that's right. It is.
I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but
because
they're putting cardboard cutouts in the stadium.
I have to tell you,
is the club paying to print those out? Because it's got to be like $100 at least to print yourself in color, life size.
It's 19 euros.
It's 19 euros, man. Germany, I could move there.
Germany has. Listen, I kind of secretly love. I secretly love the Bundesliga. I have to admit, it's a really well-run league. The fans are great. They reject a lot of big money modern football type stuff. It's a very sort of democratic league. It's not very competitive, unfortunately, because Bayern win it every year, or Dortmund. But I kind of like the vibe of the Bundesliga. I saw that they're doing that too, Sally, and where they're playing baseball in Taiwan. They've got baseball back. They don't have any fans, but they've got cardboard cutouts in the stands to make it look like fans.
Yeah, it's really. So I'm just reading the article, and it's really funny. The gentleman who started the supporters club, who idea came up with it. It was his idea. Sorry, that sounded weird. He has a quote in here saying that football fans in Germany are not the smartest people in the world.
You know what? I'll bet they don't have great senses of humor either. Just a guess.
Right.
I've known some Germans, good people. People I've known were good people, but you're not getting a lot of banter out of the Germans. Not a lot of jokes. Not a lot of humor. But that's good that that's kind of cool that they did that. I still wouldn't want to watch a game played behind closed doors, but it's a little better.
It'd just be weird to see all those faces with no noise.
Well, the no noise
you
thing
could
is
pump stadium through the speakers. You could pump some crowd noise.
Yeah.
they do it like Tottenham.
Yes, like Tottenham.
Yeah, you could pump some crowd. Well, you could. I mean,
Yeah.
that's true. You could put. I mean, you could make it seem like a real atmosphere.
So I'm looking forward to the first rendition of Bubbles Behind Masks and how that affects everything.
Well, that's a whole different. I mean, listen, that's a whole different discussion. Is what life is going to be like when we are, open again, and it's not going to be. People think we're going to go bursting out of the gates like at Churchill Downs for the Kentucky Derby, like the horses do. It's not. I don't think it's going to be like that. It's going to be weird.
I have no doubt that whenever football is back and fans can go, that whatever stadiums are hosting those first games, those atmospheres are going to be incredible.
I agree. When the fans are back and when it's, when we have some form of normalcy, like there's a vaccine or there's herd immunity, whatever there has to be, you know what I mean? When the pandemic is over, those first games back are going to be tremendous. And I guarantee you we'll lose 3-0 to whoever we're playing. So that's the only thing I know is that the atmosphere will be fantastic. West Ham will lose and all the fans will be angry. And it'll be like really back to normal again.
Right.
Anyway, I normally, before the pandemic, I had to go make lunches for the boys every night. Don't do that anymore. Obviously, they're at home with me all the time. So they're just always here. But anyway, Sully and Kostya and John and Chris, appreciate you guys being with us. It was a lot of fun tonight. Really enjoyed this. Everybody in the chat room, big crowd in the chat room. Huge. Yeah. Fantastic chat room tonight. Why are you wearing a Pirates hat? I thought you were a Philly guy.
My wife is from the other side of the state, so.
Okay.
Go Red.
Fair enough.
So we visited.
Go Red.
I appreciate the Arsenal troll too, whose last comment so far was Rice is overrated. To be honest, and Guendouzi is better.
What is he smoking? My God.
No, listen, guys. He's right, of course. Rice is highly overrated. Every other club in the Premiership should know he's very highly overrated.
Yeah.
You don't want him. You don't want him. Just leave him at West Ham. He'll be our problem. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
All your players are better than him. That's how it works. All your players are always better. Our guy is overrated. But if you want Carlos Sanchez, no, that's a player.
Take him.
That's a player you want. We'll give it to you for $30 million.
Sean Longstaff. Turn your attention to him instead.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Go get that Longstaff guy. Yeah, go get that guy. Yeah. That's what you guys want. Shaka. Okay, fine. Yeah, no, listen, you're absolutely correct, Arsenal fan. Your knowledge of football is overwhelming to all of us. And yes, of course Shaka outpaces. Of course he does. Yeah. No, Rice is terrible. Rice
Shaka Hislop, maybe.
Rice is just a goofball dork, and nobody should ever want him. We'll hang on to him. He's our burden from now on.
The most easily scared person in the Premier League, sure.
Or is he still in limbo?
Who's that?
Xhaka. Didn't he have that big falling out with Arsenal fans this season?
Oh, before the coaching change.
Who doesn't have a falling out with Arsenal fans? I mean, no, I don't know. I have no idea.
Dude, Arsenal fans were fine with Arsenal TV too. Arsenal fan TV. Because they voiced an opinion that was against what the fans were. It's like, okay. Yeah.
Arsenal fan TV is lit, though. You got to admit.
Yeah, those guys are great.
I was right behind it when they were recording it. I went to Arsenal Chelsea, and it was like 150 people just all around this camera. Yeah. And like, how you even get on screen? Like, you got to get super lucky.
It's an event for sure.
Yeah. I'd like the guy who hosts it, actually. He seems like a good dude.
He seems like a great guy.
And he handles everybody pretty well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's the only one who's even marginally sane. They're no fun. Those Arsenal people are no fun. Like, our fans get angry and frustrated, but we're fun and we're funny. We have a good sense of humor. They don't. They have no sense of humor.
Oh, it's the gift that keeps on giving. I love it.
Oh, it's unintentional comedy. It's the greatest gift of unintentional comedy since I don't know, since LinkedIn, which I think is the funniest of all social media sites.
They were on TalkSport too. TalkSport started going after Arsenal Fan TV, which is even more hilarious. Like, you're a professional organization going after fan cams now. Like, that's what they've turned
for a YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. Well,
Yeah.
Talk Sport. I mean, professional sports radio is a real stretch.
I mean, we're very professional on this network, though. Friday Night Likes is, run like a corporate machine.
Friday Night Lights is the best show we have, actually. And
No,
John Nolan is the best host we have, and that is true. Friday Night Lights is a great show. Too bad it's never on Friday nights anymore, but
No, stop.
Don't
Children
forget
going
raise
away.
PowerPoints.
The
Don't forget
child
raise
going
PowerPoints.
away.
it's also not kosher to have a Friday night show, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, but it's still worth watching when it's on. Yeah, so you guys, I don't know. I'm sure there's a show on tomorrow night. Tim's put something on like every night now. We're like a real TV channel now. So
Yeah.
anyway, check our social media and all that stuff for when the next thing is on. Thanks for hanging with us for an hour and a half. And yeah, Chris,
Come
what
on,
you
you
want
Irons.
I'm trying to point at my at. I can't figure it out.
to point at what now?
He's
My
got to go.
Twitter tag.
Oh,
Like this.
that's your last name. That's your last name.
Yeah.
Wow. Or is it? Man, there's a lot of consonants in that name.
It's Eastern European.
Okay, I was just wondering about that. That's
Dang,
okay.
can I buy a vowel?
Is it
Literally
is it
just get one.
Heritzik?
Kritzik?
You got it spot on.
Nice.
Cool.
Was that from Hungary?
Poland,
That's why I
What
got it.
regime is that
That's why I
from?
got it. I'm a Karolinski. I'm a
Ukraine,
ski.
Slovakia. I've done my entire family history on my mom's side of the family back to like medieval times.
Yeah.
I'm related to,
Wow.
I've come from a descendant of English kings, actually, supposedly.
Oh, hey, there you go. There you go. That's pretty cool. That's very cool. All right. Anyway,
All right.
enough from us. We'll hope to see you again soon. And come on, you Irons.
My goodness.